problems here, but I pray, Lord, that you will lead the way because the Holy Spirit can speak to us. Thank you, Lord, for that. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. I'm going to give you some background information as I talk to you today. My title is Evangelism, My Reasons for Keeping On. My reasons. As I have often said in my messages, I hate to use the word I, because it's not me, it's God.
Amen.
Our eyes are on God. He is the important one. So when it was mentioned in Sunday school about Japanese closing their eyes, and the reason that they close their eyes when people are talking is that not that they're sleepy, but they're listening. And it's easier to listen if you're not watching things. Long ago we had a message when we were still at the old church on distraction. Distraction. Things that keep us away from God.
Amen.
I came to Japan 50 years ago. I was 24, so you can figure my age. When I came to Japan, I had been going to church in the United States from the time I was a little boy. From my first kiss with a girl in the first grade, we snuck into the sanctuary before everyone got in there, and that was my first kiss. So I still remember going to church at that age. I went to church every Sunday. Our family went to church every Sunday. I went to a Christian college. And then I came to Japan. I came to Japan for 1 year to teach at King's School, the whatever, Department of Defense School, and I taught there with the plans of staying 1 year and going to South America as I had originally planned. Well, that never worked out, obviously. But when I came, things changed. When I was in the States, I went to church every Sunday. I went to Christian college. But it took coming to Japan to make me realize who God was.
Amen.
You see, when I came here, I didn't have all these people around me that go to church on Sunday. I was at the base. I made Japanese friends. Sunday was the time to take trips. I never thought about church at all. I didn't think about church until my baby was born. And when my baby was born, I wanted to raise my baby learning American customs. So I thought, you have to bring that baby to church and have baby baptized. But getting married didn't change my life. Something was missing. I was, matter of fact, when my wife was pregnant with my daughter, I got so angry that I left the house and went to my friend's house, and I didn't come back for a week because I had done something terrible that I never wanted to do. It's not in me. And I'm confessing it to you. I grabbed my wife by her hair, yanked her, and dragged her down the hall to the bedroom, and I said, "Stay in here." because she was being very rebellious. When I came home, she said, "Do you want to eat something?" And I had a guest with me, and it made me very angry, and my feelings got control of me. And I thought, if I can do that with my wife, with a pregnant woman, I got to get away from there. I can't be there. That started the whole thing, because I knew I couldn't do anything to make my life better. But since I love children, and I had my daughter now, I got involved with orphans. And I found out there was an orphanage right here in Sasebo, near my house. So I went to the orphanage. I talked to the missionary there that was taking care of the orphanage. It was called the World Mission to Children. But he was there as a missionary. And I just suddenly poured out all my feelings to him. And he said, "Why don't you, and if your wife's interested, come for counseling?" My wife, he said, "My wife will counsel your wife, and I will counsel you." So we went separately. And the first thing that he said to me, and most of you that have been here a while have already heard this, he said, "I want to help you, but I need to know where you are in your walk with God." And suddenly, all these lights went on. It was the first time in my life I had ever understood walking with God. I knew all the Bible verses. I knew about Jesus said, "I'll be with you always," for example. "I'll never leave you." Yeah, I knew those up here. But at that moment, when he said, "Walk with God," I realized God isn't up there. He's down here. Amen. He's with me. That is what is called born again. Jesus told Nicodemus, is that right? "You must be born again." Nicodemus said, "How can I be born again? Can I go back in my mother's womb?" And Jesus said, "You must be born of the Spirit." So those words, "I don't know where you are in your walk with God," opened my eyes to the fact that God was with me. He had been with me my whole life. But I didn't see him. I didn't know him. So in 1979, you can figure the dating, I was born again. Amen. And when I was born again, I realized I have to start all over again. All the things I have, the facts I have learned in all these years were up here. They were not here in my heart. That was the problem. It was a religion. It wasn't a relationship. And I began to have a relationship with God. That was in September 25th, actually, in 1979. And from that time, I started all over by reading the Bible from beginning to end. I thought, I need a panorama. I have to find out how all these things fit together. And that's what I did. The base was going to close. I was working at the base. They said, "We're going to close the base." So all the teachers need to find a new place to teach. I had just gotten married at that time, and I had built a house. Where am I going to go? All my friends were Japanese. I talked with everybody in Japanese. And so I said, "I'm not going anywhere unless it's someplace here in Japan." And the answer came back from the government, go to Korea or go back home. So I said, okay, I'll stay here. And I quit. I was stubborn. I looked for jobs, and not knowing, at that time, not yet having been born again, really, I didn't know what was going to happen. But I quit. But God knew what was going to happen. He had plans for my life. So in 1983, I decided I'm going to stay here the rest of my life. And I became a naturalized Japanese citizen. 1983. When I was born again, something changed in my life, one big thing, and that was actually Paul said it, I cannot not speak about Jesus. So students would come to my office to practice English. I got a job at the university, and they would come to my office and practice English, and our conversation was about Jesus. That isn't what they came for. But they didn't care. They just wanted to practice English. One of those people that came often started coming to church with me. And because he had been hearing about Jesus, he met the pastors. At that time, the church I was going to, the pastor's sons, same age as him, and they became friends, and he became a Christian, and he was baptized. Another one, he was in the karate club. The karate club had a going-away party. He invited me to come to their going-away party. At that party, at the end of that party, he said, can I talk to you? And I said, sure. He said, my senior people who were above him, they said, you have lots of questions, so go and talk to Mr. Ando. So I said, fine. When do you want to come? He said, tomorrow. And the next day he came and he said, I have many questions. I said, what kind of questions? He said, for example, they have two kinds of economics they teach. One is communist, one is democratic. I don't know which one is true. And then other questions like that. I said, I know nothing about economics. I teach at university, but I'm teaching English. I said, you want to know the truth. I said, the only truth I know is Jesus. He said, that's okay. And the next day he went to church with me. And he has been my best friend all those years. He's now 58 years old. The reason I am telling you this is that I had not planned to evangelize. It was natural. It just came out. That same person that, the last one I was talking about, that said anything about the truth. He wanted to know the truth. He called me. He had already graduated, and he called me and he said, I would like to make a trip abroad, but I don't speak English. He wasn't in my class. He said, I don't speak English. I have never been abroad. Could you bring me abroad? I said, where? He said, any place. So I started thinking, well, where should I go? Go to China? Oh, that's like Japan. Go to Korea? Ah, that's like Japan. And then I discovered Thailand. So I made the trip, planned the trip for Thailand for me and my daughter and that young man. And I went to Thailand. That was in 1990. We went to have fun 1 week. But I discovered while I was in Thailand that when we went to these temples, which they always bring you to, there were lots of young people there. Look at all the young people here. Where are they? Where are they? Right? You go to churches here in Japan, I don't know about the States, but in Japan, you go to churches, you don't see any young people. Things for young people are on Sundays. But there in Thailand, these young people were there going to the temples. And I thought, wow, if they have that kind of faith, if they knew about Jesus, wow. Well, that opened my mind to it. And I decided I want to go to Thailand again. Through many different things, I learned in less than a year the Thai language, reading, writing, and hearing, speaking. And of course, that wasn't natural, was it? You don't do that unless you've got a class, intensive. I didn't have a teacher, but I could read and write it. And the next year in July, I went to Thailand, and that was in 1991. And as I was getting ready to go, God gave me a Bible verse, which I'm going to ask read. It's in Acts chapter 26, verses 17 and 18.
Scripture reads, "Deliver thee from the people and from the Gentiles, unto whom now I send thee, to open their eyes and to turn them from darkness to light, and from the power of Satan unto God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and inheritance among them which are sanctified by faith that is in me."
Thank you. So God was saying in those verses, go and preach the word. I had no idea what I was going to do. I only know I was going to Thailand. Well, God, because God is the way, He showed me how I should do. Since I had no plans of my own, I thought, well, I'll practice my Thai. And I noticed there were a lot of kids sitting on the street in front of this big department store. And so I just sat down with them, and some of them came over and began to talk to me, and I could practice my Thai. I had no idea what I was doing, but God knew. I was there to bring those children, those street children, to Jesus. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know what I should do. But these kids were hungry for a relationship with people. They wanted love. Their families sent them to Bangkok to work. They graduated from elementary school, and there they are in Bangkok. They're supposed to be working. No place to stay, no money, no food. They were just there on the street. For me, that was great pain, because I felt love. I felt love for those children. And then God led the way. He led the way with those children. They came to me for companionship. Many, many times I brought them to have lunch. I tried not to give them money because I didn't know what they were going to do with it. But I asked them, "Did you eat? Are you hungry? Yes, I'm hungry. I didn't eat for 2 days or whatever. So I would go to have lunch with them, bring them to eat. Sometimes it wasn't convenient, so I gave them some money, and they zipped right over to get something to eat. They weren't trying to con me. They weren't trying to get money out of me. They were trying to save their own lives. So that was the beginning of my evangelism in Thailand. I didn't know I was there as an evangelist. I had no plans. That was not my plan. I was there to enjoy myself because I had been there once before and it was nice. I wanted to see more of it. I didn't go there for evangelism. But everything from the beginning of learning the language until the time I left there, God was in control. He had the way. He was the way. And being down there, he was the light in the darkness. Just as we just read, eyes open. Open your eyes. Open your eyes. And we often tell people, other Christians, about open your eyes. Jesus said many times, you have eyes to see, you have ears to hear, but you are blind and deaf. In any case, each time I went down, had a break at the university, I went down to Thailand. I had to do many things. I stayed in a slum 1 year with one of the street kids who said, you can stay at my house. That was in the slums. I stayed in the slums during the summer. One of the street kids told me about his brother's apartment. His brother had an apartment. Well, it's a one-room apartment. It has a toilet and a shower. That's all. So I rented an apartment. Anyway, God kept moving things along. And then, when I went to Thailand, I didn't see any kids. And then I did meet a couple of the kids who knew me. And they said, we've been arrested. They were going to clean up Bangkok, and the way they were going to do it was to get rid of all the street kids. We'll put them in jail. We'll put them in children's homes. Or if they have a family that'll send them some money, send them home. So all the kids were gone. But while I was there, I had met a few of them, and one of them invited me to his house in Chiang Rai, which is in the northern part. And I noticed that they're a very poor family, and he explained his situation. And I said, oh, well, the money that we were making here in Japan and the money that they were getting, what they were getting was nothing. For us, it was like living on, 500 yen for a month for a family. So I thought, I can help you. Sure. That began to open my heart to helping people. But not money. The money was because God had taught. And there's a Bible verse that said when someone comes to you and they're in need, you don't say, be well, go home. Bless you. No. You have to help. So that was there. One of the kids that was still there, he talked to me, and I showed him pictures. I had pamphlets for the kids versions of Bible, of the gospel. And the kids would come to me and ask, do you have another one? Do you have another one? They were hungry for something to do, and they were happy to read these, what we call tracts, that have the gospel in them. So I was buying those and giving them out to kids. Well, one of the kids, when I was talking with him, he said, I'm going home this weekend. But would you please write to me and send me a picture of you and your daughter? Because I had told him I had a daughter. So I wrote to him, and his sister, his younger sister, answered. And she said, I'm still in elementary school. I'm graduating this year, but I can't go on to junior high school because you have to pay for it, and we have no money. Well, to me, that was a door. The door was open. Come over here. They're in the northeastern part of Thailand near Laos, way far from the big city. But what I had learned is that all of these children on the streets were coming from the country. So what was God doing? He was changing my situation. He was adjusting my task from the street children in the city to where the street children come from, out into the country. And so I ended up going and visiting that family to make sure that they weren't trying to just get money out of me. Thais are good at that. And anyway, the younger sister, she was very interested and, of course, wanted to go to school. The grandmother, who was taking care of them, she was really excited because she wanted her grandchildren to go to school. She had gone to school 2 years, grandmother. That's all. And so I decided, well, I guess I can trust them, so I'm going to help. That started off, but then I found out that her brother that I had met in Bangkok and his cousin, who lived next door to them, were drug addicts. And the family told me, I had to go back to Bangkok, and they said, take those kids with you. Take them with you. They're just trouble here. So I did. Working with kids on the street, the time you find the kids on the street is in the evening. So in the evening, I would go out, go downtown Bangkok, and talk with these street children. And as I did so, these two boys, cousins, were staying in my apartment. And one day I came back and they said, we were praying for you to come back early, and you did. I said, you were praying? Who are you praying to? And they said, we were praying to your God. Your God. And then I said, well, why are you doing that? And they said, anyone who would give their time like that, to go out in the middle of the night to help people, your God must be great. And they both accepted Christ. Amen. And that started my work in that village. And from that time on, it changed. I was staying at the home of one of the twins, or one of the cousins' grandmother. I was staying at her home. It was a house built on stilts, has 3 walls upstairs. There are no rooms, just 3 walls to keep out the rain and so forth. But I stayed there. It's okay. I don't care. As Paul said, whatever condition I am in, I'm satisfied. I had food. I had a place to stay. And that's what I did. So as I was there, these kids introduced me to their friends, and I began to meet all these people in the village. All of these children, teenagers, they needed leading. So my job had changed. The verse that was leading me especially were two verses. One is in Matthew chapter 16, verse 24 and 25, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for me will find it." And there we have the verse, deny yourself. Most missionaries you will find all over the world are living in the big cities. And they're trying to live the style that they did in their home country. I was living with the people the way they were. I didn't care. I was simply following what Jesus said, deny yourself. You don't need all those other things. You got food, you got a house. That's all you need. The other verse is in Matthew chapter 28, verse 18 through 20. Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 through 20. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded to you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." Go out. And that doesn't have to be out of the country. We are here in a church. Jesus said what? Sit in the church, wait for the people to come in? No. Jesus said, get out. Go out. And what is that? That's evangelism. That's evangelism. That is how God led me to become an evangelist. Now, I think we have some pictures. And this is an example to you of what you can expect as an evangelist. Those pictures are all pictures of a little boy. His name is Anik. And when I met him, I think he was about 8 years old. And when he met me, he took me. He took me over. The whole time I was in the village, he was with me. I wanted to go take a walk so I could pray. He's come along. I'm going to take a bath. He's going to take a bath with me. I'm going to the toilet. He wants to go take a toilet with me. He wanted to be with me 24 hours a day. And in Thailand, they don't like people to have to sleep alone, especially old people. And so they wanted him to be my companion when I slept. In case I needed something, he's there. So he was there even when I was sleeping. This boy was, and if you look at the pictures closely, you can see what a happy child he is. Big smiles. You watch him there with the little kids. He's taking care of all these little kids. In the villages, everybody is connected. So it's a family. The village is a family. Nobody worries about whether their kids eat or not because somebody is going to feed them. But this boy, he was out. His mother didn't want him. His father didn't want him. They had 2 more children, but he was the first, and they didn't want him, and they didn't love him. But he found love in me. As the time went by, I brought my daughter down to Thailand, and she met him. And she noticed, and I noticed, that he was really bright. But one big problem was he couldn't read. He could write. He wrote, "I love God," in Thai. "I love Elena," my daughter. He wrote it in Thai. "I love Dad," and he called me Dad. And then I asked him to read it back to me. He couldn't. He could write perfectly, but he couldn't read what he was writing. Of course, with that problem, his education is stinted. And my daughter and I decided we were going to adopt him. But I wanted him to finish junior high school first, so he has the basics in knowledge, even if they're, doesn't speak English or anything like that. He had the basics. However, because of his problem of reading, he decided he would not go on to junior high school. So his mother said, "Okay, I'm going to send you over to my brother who's in a temple right now, and you can stay there." He didn't want to leave his home. He tried his best for his mother and father to love him. No love. He was not getting love. When I got down there, I found out he had already been sent to that village far away. I'd never been there. And I thought, well, I've got to go visit him. And he called me. And he said, "Today's my birthday." So he was 13. He had just turned 13. And I remembered that I promised. I was just simply waiting for him to graduate from junior high school. Well, in any case, a week later, I came home, and one of the other kids that were staying with me were crying. And they said they had a call that he had committed suicide. He had just turned 13. He committed suicide. I don't know if he committed suicide or he was playing or what the thing was, but he had hung himself from a wall that was about this high. So that's why I think he was playing. But in any case, everybody at the temple there loved him. And when I went there, his mother showed up, crying her eyes out, although she never loved him, never showed love to him. She put on a show. And his, what would it be? His grandmother's sister, a daughter, his grandmother's daughter came to me and she said, "He died because you weren't there." And she said, "You're the only one in that village that loved him, and because you weren't there, it's your fault." Of course, that hurt very, very much. So you see, in evangelism, everything is not good. There I was ready to bring him into a new life here in Japan to be with me forever. But he had such great problems in his heart. The fact that his mother and father never loved him. They didn't want him. And he wanted their love. love wasn't enough. So I couldn't give him everything I wanted. And when you're doing evangelism, you can't give everybody everything they need. If people are very poor, you can't feed everybody. If they don't have a home, you can't give a home to everybody. But you can love them. Of course, I was heartbroken. This was my boy. And the pictures that you saw. This happy little kid. This little kid that was taking care of all the other little kids, smaller than him. And was always smiling. And was so full of love. Was gone. Of course, I didn't know how to accept this. And I have a devotional that I have that's called Our Daily Bread. And there was a little story in there. And as I read the story, I don't believe we have the whole thing on here, do we? It's 1 Kings chapter 14, verses 1 through 18. I'm going to tell you the story rather than have you read it because it's long. So I'll tell you the story, and I have to give a little background. After David and Solomon, as you may know, had many wives, and they all had kids, and he built temples for them. He would turn himself away from God. And one of his sons, the king's name was Jeroboam. One of his sons, named Abijah, became ill. And it says Jeroboam said to his wife, "Go, disguise yourself so you won't be recognized as the wife of Jeroboam. Then go to Shiloh. Abijah, the prophet, is there, the one who told me I would be king over the people." So he said, go secretly so a person doesn't know who you are, and find out since he's a prophet, what's going to happen to my boy, my son. Well, we find out that the prophet was almost blind. But God told him that the wife of Jeroboam was going to come. And he had a message for him. I'll make a long story short. God tells him about all of the horrible things that the leaders of Judah, which is the southern part of when the country split between two sons, he was the king there. And as the king there, he was just as bad, it says, as those who came before him. In other words, after Solomon, David's son Solomon, all the kings were bad, whether they were the ones in the south that decided they were going to band together, or the ones in the north, which is Samaria, and they were going to band together. So they had two different kings. The north was so bad that if you read the prophets in the Bible, almost every prophet is sent to Samaria. They immediately withdrew from God, and they decided to make their own gods. The people in the south were not much better. There were two kingdoms there, and that was called Judah, and those kings too. God says, I tore the kingdom away from the house of David, and I gave it to you, but you have not been like my servant David, who kept my commands and followed me with all his heart. doing only what was right in my eyes. You have done more evil than all who lived before you. And now he's got a son, and his son is sick. So his answer to the king's wife, who was hiding herself, disguising herself, he says, as for you, go back home. When you set your foot in your city, the boy will die. All Israel will mourn for him and bury him. He is the only one belonging to Jeroboam who will be buried, because he is the only one in the house of Jeroboam in whom the Lord, the God of Israel, has found anything good. And he's going to die. I put the two together. This young man, at 13 years old, was a blessing to everyone around him, but no one loved him. Why did he die? Why did God let him die? Whether he was playing or whatever the case was, why did God do that? And when I read this, it said, God, he's the only one that God has found any good in. This boy was a good boy. I don't want him to grow up to be like all the people around him. I'm going to take him. And if we jump a little bit, it says, then Jeroboam's wife got up and left and went to Tirzah. As soon as she stepped over the threshold of the house, the boy died. They buried him, and all of Israel mourned for him, as the Lord had said through his servant, the prophet Abijah. So, God was saying to me, yes, you have denied yourself. Now you are being denied of this child that you love, that loves you so much. Don't worry. I have the way. I have the control. He's with me now. You don't have to worry about him. He's not going to turn out like all the other bad people around him. So if you plan to follow what Jesus said and be an evangelist, and this is not as a job, this is as a command. Jesus says, go out. He doesn't say, you people right here. He is saying that to all of us. Get out there. Spread the gospel. Do you love God? Do you want people to know about God? Well, then get out there and meet them. Here we are in Japan. We're not here just for American base. We're here for everyone. Everyone. And it's not just the Japanese either. We have Sampa, who's from Sri Lanka, and his friends who are here in the city. We have people from India here in the city. We have people from many different places. We don't have to even leave South Subo to go out to all the nations. And notice nations here does not mean countries. It means people. As I was growing up in the northern part of the United States, I didn't know anything about race. Almost everyone was from Scandinavia. That is Sweden, Norway, Finland, Germany. I knew people that were white. But when I saw a movie or something and I saw other colors, I said, oh, well, Mexicans, of course. They're not going to be the same as me. Not their color is different. I didn't see a color. I didn't know a color. I didn't think about a color until I came into this church. And then I was surprised that when I was teaching at the base, we had many African Americans in our church and in our schools. I didn't know that. I found the school yearbook. I looked at it and said, huh? George? He graduated at valedictorian. I didn't know he was black. And then this one little boy that I liked very, very much, I saw his picture and I said, oh, he was black. I didn't know what a color was. So the same thing here when Jesus says, go out to all the nations. He doesn't say color either. That's why when people say, but you are you're white, so your religion is white. No. So please, when you go out, don't look, this person is Japanese, this person is something else. Just look at them as people. God created people. And remember that go out, this verse about going out, spread the gospel, bring people to Christ, is not a suggestion. It's a command. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for leading us this morning. There are many, many